Okay, we're here at the launch pad, once again in the Kerbal Space Program demo. This is the monstrous contraption that I've built to put a Kerbal on the moon. So, let's go ahead and throttle up, set our stabilization, and launch. Lots of solid rocket boosters here on the bottom. Stabilization, it seems to be setting up a bad oscillation there. Damage our rocket and any chance of even getting to space to begin with. So, fine-tune the adjustments manually. There's the first set of rocket boosters. Fire the second set. Keep our rotation in check here. Hando Kerman seems to be handling this not too unreasonably to be expected. I.e., he's only freaking out a little bit. Have fun, little guy. You're going to the moon. Coming home. Release the second set of rocket boosters. We're now in the secondary section, I guess you should say, of the atmosphere. So our aerodynamic fins are going to be less effective and responsive. We can still use them. We'll check out our total fuel usage here, how much is left, where it all is. Turn on stabilization again. Let's take a look at the map, see what our projected trajectory is. We're getting out there. That now puts us in the boundary of outer space. I'm actually going to shut down the engines. I'm going to use the last of that fuel on those big rockets to put us into actual orbit. So let's, at this point, we're in space. There's no atmosphere. So the fins do very little, if anything. So I'm going to turn on the RCS thrusters and use those to orient our ship in the position that we want it to be for the last part of the burn, using up the last fuel on these 9 engines. And yes, there are 9 big rocket engines. I added these RCS thrusters down here, which is an improvement over the 6A model, just because it makes it easier to maneuver the whole massive complex of what this rocket system is. It does use the RCS fuel faster, but we're not going to be moving this much mass for very much longer. And I can lock that in with our steadilier stabilization system. At this point, I'm going to turn off RCS because it's going to burn that fuel out quick. And just use the regular gyros of the stabilization system. This is what we look like in space. And we're approaching the top of our trajectory, called apoapsis, around planet Kerbin. It's also known as apogee by some folks. The bottom of the orbit would be periapsis or perigee, which we don't have one yet because we're not in orbit. We're just on a really high hill climb, so to speak. So, we got 50 seconds to reach there. Let's use the last of the fuel in these big rockets to get us situated. Also notice that this begins to level out here. And boom. Release those guys. And we're going to continue to coast. You notice our apoapsis got higher because we burned before we got there. We have 30 seconds to achieve that position, and I want to reorient quickly here and set us up for about as flat a trajectory as we can get. To set us up for a moonshot orbital. Let's fire off those other thrusters now. Doing this at the top of the trajectory is the most effective and efficient, so the timing was a little bit off. I wanted to do it just before I got there, but you can see those liquid engines are going to fall back into the ocean. But you can also see that our trajectory is expanding. Soon we'll be able to achieve orbit, and the periapsis shows up on the other side. We want these to both be at least 100,000. So let's let that burn for a little while. It's going to take a minute or two to fully realize our orbit. You notice it keeps expanding. This is behind us. It's just a computer trajectory. And ahead of us, you can see it keeps moving as well. Across the surface of the planet. You can see what we look like here. Our current altitude. We're still in space even though we're descending. It seems a bit contrary, but yeah, we are going downhill. The thing is, so is the curve of the planet, so it's okay to go downhill because we're not going to run into anything yet. Horizontal vector. Let's check. Oh, look at that. We have achieved our periapsis. 45,000, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and I'm going to call 100. Shut down the engines. We can keep this fuel for a long time. Basically our entire trip to the moon. These things eventually should fall down. The rest of these are from a previous launch. Released them late in the launch when I had already achieved orbit, so they're still in orbit, and probably will be for 100 years, who knows. You can see our previous, the 6A module is out there around the moon right now, in orbit, and it is really off axis. It's like, it's out there. So, this is pretty flat. I've had very few orbits come out this flat. It takes practice. So, with that, I'm going to close out this section and look for a future video putting this module into orbit around the moon. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off.